snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hi guys! So I am here today to do a book review, and this book took me a while to get through because it's actually 3 books bound up into one edition. This is the His Dark Materials trilogy. It is by Philip Pullman, and I joined in with the read-along that Jen and Holly were hosting, so I will put links to both of their channels below if you want to go and check them out. But they both adore this series, and they wanted to do a read-along with a lot of other people to get them into reading this series. Now, this was a reread for me. I've actually already read all of the His Dark Materials trilogy when I was younger. I got them from the library and I really, really adored them. And then I borrowed them off of my dad, who actually also really adored them. And it's one of the only series that my dad and I have both read and he recommended to me, so that's quite cool. This is a series which I think is marketed as a children's series but could be easily interpreted as an adult series as well. Like I said, both my dad and I really enjoyed it when I was a child and he was an adult, and I think it works both ways, and I think it's hard to get a book that does work for both adults and children. I think Harry Potter does it, and I think that this series does it even better maybe, because there's a lot more deep ideas within this series than I think there are in Harry Potter. I love both Harry Potter and this series, but I think it's hard to choose between the two of them because Harry Potter has 7 books and it's very different to this book. I genuinely adore this series though. I think it's fantastic in all ways. We basically are following a young character called Lyra Silvertongue, and she is in this world which is an alternate world to the world that we live in. She has an Oxford and she goes to the university there, and she's sort of a street child who runs around and plays in the street with her friend Roger and gets involved in all sorts of mischief and magic, and she just gets up to trouble basically. But she's looked after by the scholars of Jordan College at Oxford, and she doesn't really know who her mother and father are. She's looked after by her uncle who funds her staying there and getting an education. But one day people start being taken, children start being taken in the world where she's from, and no one knows where they're going. They're just vanishing, and they're suddenly up and down the country. These reports are coming in that children are going missing, and so Lyra gets worried, as most people do. She doesn't really give it much credit at first, but then she gets worried and she gets involved in a plot, essentially. She meets a lovely lady who she thinks is absolutely lovely and is going to take her and train her and be really wonderful, and then she realises that this lady is not so nice. Mrs. Coulter is her name. She also has her uncle. Lord Asriel is her uncle, and she basically leaves both of them behind and gets involved in a plot, going looking for her best friend Roger, who goes missing. So that's kind of the plot of the first book. She's looking for Roger, but besides all of that, we have so much more going on in this world. This book deals with sexuality in a big way. It's definitely something I didn't pick up on as a child, and your child wouldn't pick up on probably, but it's something that's really a present theme without the whole book, and it's a really interesting idea. In this world where Lyra lives, all of the people have demons, and demons are essentially the soul of these people. And it's kind of like a physical manifestation of your soul. Her demon is called Pantalaimon, and Pantalaimon is whatever he wants to be. He can change shape, whatever mood Lyra is in and whatever situation they're in, he can change shape to help her. He's also someone who is basically an eternal friend to her. Her best friend in all the world is Pantalaimon, and that is the same for all of the children and all of the people within her world. Their demons are their best friends. Within her world, she also has all sorts of different types of people. There are gypsies that she gets involved with, and there are witches who obviously are magical. There are armoured bears who are great big hulking beasts covered in armour who fight on the ice plains, and there are explorers and aeronauts, all sorts of crazy types of people, which is really fascinating for her, a young child venturing into the world, going on a big adventure. She meets all of these types of people and they instantly realise that she is more than she first appears to be, not that she knows this. She also gets hold of some very interesting artefacts, one of which is the Alethiometer. I won't say what this does, but it's a really interesting kind of steampunk idea. It's pretty cool, I must admit. So when she gets her hands on that, things change. I just think there's a lot of really interesting ideas within this. There are some great moments that reference Christianity, and it is definitely linked to Christianity and the ideas of the Bible. but I wouldn't say again that this is a hugely present theme that is in your face. It's just there if you take note of it. And I think on the reread I did definitely notice gender and sexuality and religion coming into play a lot more than I did when I was a child. When I was a child, I didn't realise any of those things. I just thought, this is a great adventure. The second book within this, we get introduced to a new character called Will, who also comes into the story. Will is from our world. He's not from the same world as Lyra, but he manages to cross over into another world by a coincidental chance. He is a young child, a bit older than Lyra, but he has had a lot of responsibility. He has had to look after his mother, who we think is a little bit crazy. She doesn't really know a lot about what's going on in her surroundings, and she definitely has paranoia. He hasn't got a father because his father went missing when he was a lot younger, so it's always been him and his mum, and he ends up going into this other world, meeting Lyra and getting involved in her storyline. And then the third book is the two of them together, continuing where they left off at the end of the second, and basically doing something that is going to change the entire fate of this world. And I won't say any more than that, but it's basically a really interesting book and has some great ideas. I love the story of this. I think it's magical, I think it's whimsical, I think some of the characters within this are just fantastic. Lee Scoresby and Yorick Bernison, who is the armoured bear that they meet. I love both of them. I think they're fun characters, really, really exciting. I love to hate Mrs. Coulter and Lord Asriel. Both of them are very flawed characters and have some real problems within the series with things that they are doing. We also meet angels, and we meet this idea of dust. We also get a lady called Mary coming in the third book. Mary is an adult and she gets involved in the story of Lyra and Will too. It's a really emotional series with some great moments of real anger-inducing scenes, real happy scenes, real emotional sad scenes as well. I think this is one of the most heartbreaking and emotional books I've read as a child, and it definitely was upsetting as a child, but I think it's even more so now reading it, because you understand even more about who these characters are and what they've grown to be over the course of the books, and there are some devastating moments. There's also some really horrible moments, there's some abusive moments. It's got a lot packed in here, but I would say it's totally appropriate to kids. Even though I've said all that, it is totally appropriate to kids. I think I read this when I was about 10 or 11, really quite young, and it didn't have any strange impact on me at all. It was just a fun adventure. But if you do return to this world when you're older, you see so much that you didn't see the first time around, and I loved that about this series, that not only is it something I can read for fun again, but it's also something that on the second read through you get a lot more out of. So I just think that this world feels very expansive, very fun, filled with lots of adventure, lots of different types of characters and races and people, and it has some great themes as well underlying the whole story. I would love to hear if you guys have read this, what you think of it. I really enjoyed it. I definitely think it's a really fun one, has some great moments, and I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars overall, although the first book I would give 5 stars overall, but the second two I gave 4. I just think it's fantastic, I just love it, and I would highly recommend it if you want to check out a really great series. So yeah, I think you could read it as an adult for the first time or as a child for the first time, and it would work either way. Let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you all for watching. Thank you to Jen and Holly for arranging this read through, because otherwise I would not have got back to it, and I'm really glad that I did. And I will see you all again soon in another video. Bye! Me and you gonna have a little chat about books.